Thank you for joining Bim Group. Tuesday Talk with Bim. I'm Deanna Sizemore, your host this week and every other week. And today we're going to talk about the non-qualitative treatment limitation analysis under the Mental Health Parity Act, as well as vaccine mandates and updates. So what we are looking at with vaccine mandates is the last information that we had was a couple of weeks ago. President Biden released an executive order that employers with 100 or more employees, as well as federal workers, companies that receive Medicare, Medicaid payments, all would require the vaccine mandate, and that would be under OSHA to send out an ETS, which is an emergency, I forgot the acronym for it. There's so many acronyms in our world. But it's an emergency order, basically saying under OSHA, grave public health issue, vaccine mandate, anyone who is exempt either from the mandate due to religious beliefs or ADA has to undergo weekly testing. And with that, there's been a lot of questions, and we don't have a lot of answers yet, unfortunately. We do expect to have more information. What we're looking at is OSHA to release something in mid-October, and it will call on the states to call on employers to mandate the vaccine or face a penalty. We don't know how that 100 or more employees is counted. Is that full-time, part-time, all the time? Are there any exemptions from the employer level? Several states, I think the last number I heard was 25 or 29, have sent a letter to the president asking to not enforce that mandate. The executive order also called on states to have schools be required to vaccinate school employees. Part of that also means that employers have to cover paid time off for employees to get vaccinated or recover from the vaccine. It's also supposed to increase the amount of COVID home test availability. And, hey, Dana, what are you doing? Are you still on the beach and calling in and doing a compliance webinar? The mention of COVID-19 home test. So I do know that I was in Walgreens Saturday, and I noticed at the pharmacy they had a sign that there was a limit on the number of home tests you could buy. Due to the limited availability. So we're supposed to see more of that. So basically, with employers with 100 or more employees, what do you need to do now? What do you need to know? ETS is Emergency Temporary Standard. Finally got it. So basically, you need to be prepared to institute a vaccine mandate if you're not already doing so. We don't know, again, how do we count that 100 employee threshold? So if you're straddling the fence, have a plan. Not yet clear how long we'll be to be in compliant. Not clear if it's going to require all fully remote employees, or not fully remote, but employees that may be remote and in the office. It is clear that if the person is remote all the time, never comes in the office, it doesn't apply to them. Not yet sure how to be enforced. What we've kind of heard is it would be an OSHA complaint, or OSHA walks in and finds it as a violation. And then who's going to be required to pay for that testing? Likely it will be the employers, and likely that will be through the health plan. So I know now with the vaccine, for example, the provider bills an admin fee to the carrier or the employer plan. So, you may see some of that, but as far as the weekly ongoing testing for those who don't meet the mandate, we'll see how that lines up and what that plays with. So more to come on the Emergency Temporary Standard by OSHA. I know enough about OSHA to be dangerous, but I did a little bit of research, and it looks like OSHA is not the reigning law in every state, including Kentucky, but it also said that if OSHA was not the reigning law in that state, the state was expected to come up with something similar to the same requirements. So whether OSHA is enforced or not, we're still going to have to do it at some point. So more to come on that. Excuse me. So with any type of mandate or incentive, let's say you're an employer under 100 and you're thinking about doing some sort of incentive, the very first thing would be have a policy in place. You need to have a very clear vaccination policy. Excuse me, Snap. Excuse me. Allergies, what we were just talking about. The vaccination policy should align with federal and state law. It should be consistent across all of your employee population. If you're doing incentive, obviously it's voluntary. If it's a mandate, then the policy needs to say it's a mandate. Policy needs to say what the exemptions are, ADA versus religious. You don't have to go into detail about what the repercussions are if you're exempt, not repercussions, that was the wrong word, what the things that employee has to do that would be exempt. So, for example, if someone's exempt due to ADA, religious exemptions, they have to be tested on a weekly basis. They have to wear PPE in areas where they're around other people. What it should say is that there are, alternatives for those who can't meet the vaccine policy, either through ADA or religious exemption. Discuss with HR what that may be. Again, just be consistent with that. You want to make sure if you're offering incentives that you offer that in line with HIPAA, GINA, ADA, EOC, all of that. So if you offer an incentive tied to a premium, it works like a wellness plan. And we talked about that last time. If you offer just a one-time dollar amount outside of any premium and just say, hey, everybody that's vaccinated by the end of the year gets $500, that's a taxable amount. If you're doing some sort of raffle or giveaway, you want to make sure you're not going against any local gaming laws or anything like that. So a lot of moving parts and pieces. You want to make sure you communicate clearly what that policy is. You want to make sure it's in writing and it explains who, why, when, where, and what. You want to make sure that your mid-level managers are aware. Again, I feel like I'm repeating myself because we talked about this 2 weeks ago, but it still is very top of mind for a lot of employers. So just kind of reiterating that. Incentives, the EEOC has been very clear that employers are allowed to offer incentives to become vaccinated voluntarily as long as the nature of the incentive is not discriminatory and not as to be coercive. So, reimbursed time to get vaccine, repercussion from any reaction. We talked about bonuses, gift cards, raffles. Maybe they get an extra day off or a half a day off. So the other thing is what are the options if you have a mandated vaccine? What are the penalties if someone refuses to get vaccinated? Aside from ADA religious exemptions, they're just like, I'm not getting it. What's the repercussions? That should be in your policy. They're terminated. They're on unpaid leave until vaccinated. They're barred from being in the building, whatever that may be. You just need to be really clear about that. We have a local employer that is doing the vaccine or terminated, and their policy was very clear. Be vaccinated by this date, and if you're not vaccinated by this date, you'll be terminated unless you have an exemption. So again, you just want to make sure that it's very clear as to who, what, when, where, and how. And then again, the requirements for non-vax, whether they're getting tested regularly, wearing PPE, daily screenings, whatever that may be. You want to accommodate for exceptions. So we talked about the ADA and religious exemptions. If someone cannot be vaccinated, you could maybe, depending on the company, you could change their schedule to where they're not working in an environment with a lot of people. Maybe they can have an office by themselves in an office setting. And if they are going to go out into a workspace, a common workspace, they're going to wear PPE. And, think of terms of what can we do that's not an undue hardship to allow this person to keep their job, not be vaccinated, and not do as we are mandating, again, across the board, because they're exempt for religious ADA reasons. If you cannot come up with an accommodation that's beyond undue hardship, again, tread carefully. You want to make sure you have things in place for those employees to be able to do when there's an exception, again, for ADA and religious reasons. You don't want to terminate them if it's ADA or religious reasons. So just be really clear. Continue to watch the guidance. We are seeing stuff come out daily out of Washington. So if you have not done something yet, then I would strongly recommend, if you do decide to do something, double check with us. Make sure the regs haven't changed. Make sure the laws haven't changed. Because again, we're getting stuff almost daily. Any questions on vaccine incentives mandates? I do want to bring up one good question we got after the last Tuesday talk was, can we survey our employees about if they've been vaccinated or not? You absolutely can. You can only ask them a yes or no question. Have you been vaccinated? Yes or no. Don't ask them why. When you ask them why, you've now crossed into HIPAA. It would be great if you could do it anonymously. So if you're just trying to gauge what % of your population is vaccinated, you could say, hey, everybody, we're going to do this anonymous survey. Maybe it's through SurveyMonkey or whatever it may be. Don't put in your name. Don't put in your email address. Just, are you vaccinated? Yes or no. If you're trying to localize it to a department or an area, you may have to actually ask the individual person. But again, don't go beyond, are you vaccinated? Yes or no. Don't ask why. That is like big red no from everybody. All right. I'm going to give a second for questions. And while I'm doing that, just a reminder, if you have not provided your Medicare Part D notice to your employees, your participants, please do so before October 14th. The deadline is actually the 15th, but I think that falls on a weekend, so we're looking at the 14th. If you are providing the notices that BIM gives you, the annual notice packet that has all of the Medicare, CHIPRA, Women's Healthcare Cancer Rights Act, all that in it, and you've given that out to your new hires and you've handed that to all your current participants once a year, you're covered. If you have not been giving that to new hires, please do so by October 14th so you can be compliant. And before we move on to mental health parity, the other thing I wanted to say is coming up in October, this just came out today on our via Bim Group's email and social media, is that UBA, our United Benefit Advisors, will be hosting a webinar in October on employers handling COVID vaccine mandates. That will be on Tuesday, October the 12th at 2 p.m. So if you are interested in hearing more about that from our partners, Fisher Phillips, please join us again on October the 12th. For our clients, that is available at no charge. For everyone else, it's a $200 fee. For those of you on the call, if you're no longer a client but you want to catch that webinar, please message me directly and I'll make sure you get access to it. So we get a recording after the fact that we can share. So I'll be happy to do that. And moving on to Mental Health Parity Act. So this is not new information, but we're just starting to hear a lot of talk about it. Back in December, when the Consolidated Appropriations Act passed, there was a couple lines within that act that said any group health plan that's subject to Mental Health Parity Act that, I'm going to pause on that because Carol has a great comment. Saw in the news, Delta Airlines will be increasing healthcare premiums for unvaccinated. Seems what discriminatory would ADA and religious exemptions apply. Yes. So great comment, Carol. So this is the same thing a lot of employers are doing. And had Delta waited about a hot minute, they'd have been required to do the mandate under the executive order by President Biden. So an employer can charge a premium surcharge. So this Delta Airlines, $200 for healthcare if you're on their health plan. If you are not vaccinated, it falls under the same guidelines as a wellness plan. So that $200 would have to be added to any incentive that they have for biometric testing, health risk assessments, tobacco surcharge, whatever that may be. All that adds up towards your percentage limit that you can offer under HIPAA incentives as well as under EEOC incentives. ADA applies. GINA applies if it includes spouses. So in that case, because it would be a health contingent outcomes based wellness plan at that point, you have to offer a reasonable alternative standard for those that either can't be vaccinated or won't be vaccinated due to ADA or religious exemptions. So that is a great question. Same thing would apply today for that, a smaller employer that wanted to offer an incentive. Falls under the wellness limit incentives, has to follow the HIPAA wellness incentive, HIPAA wellness plan guidelines. So whether it's participatory or outcomes based. So if you're requiring someone to get a vaccine, our attorney's legal opinion is that it is a outcomes based wellness plan. Therefore, reasonable alternative standard is required, and employer has to pay for that reasonable alternative standard, whatever that may be. So, great question. I'm going to shift gears back to Mental Health Parity Act. So, part of the Consolidated Appropriations Act said if you're subject to mental health parity, you have to have a written, non-qualitative treatment limitations analysis for your plan to ensure that it's compliant, or an NQTL analysis. So, that was effective. It came out in December. It was to be effective for February. Basically, the way it gets caught is that the Department of Labor walks in and says, hey, I need to see a copy of your NQTL analysis. Or an employee files a complaint, and the EEOC comes and says, hey, we need to see a copy of your NQTL analysis. I have found out over the past few weeks that most of our fully insured groups, the insurance carrier is saying that if you have a fully insured off-the-shelf plan, it is compliant. However, they don't have an analysis to just hand over. So if you were to get a call or a knock on the door from the DOL that says, hey, we need to see a copy, you need to let your account executive or account manager at BIM know, or myself know, and let us get a copy of what that analysis would look like from the carrier. If you are a self-funded group, or you're a fully insured group that maybe has a customized health plan or a carved out pharmacy plan, we're going to have to do that analysis. We are working with a couple of strategic partners to get that done. The third-party administrator that you're working with, if they don't do it, they have a third party that doesn't do it, that will do it, or they don't do it at all, and it's going to come back to us. So we have a couple of strategic partners on hand that can help you go through the NQTL analysis. It's about a 40-page document. You can do it on your own, but we looked at it and said, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to leave this to the experts. So if you get that call or somebody's asking for a copy of the NQTL, let us know. The cost is about $4,000. It's not cheap, but it's well worth it if the DOL is knocking on your door. I have also heard from some peers across the country that the DOL has added it to their letter if you were to get a regular audit. It's in the top 5-10 items on your audit letter. That would also mean that you have a very short runway to get that done, and we don't want to wait around for that. So we want to make sure and get that done sooner than later. Any questions on that? That was like treetop level, did not even get deep in it, but I want to keep us to our 20-25 minute time frame that we usually look at. Again, great question on the incentive for the vaccine. NQTL analysis, again, scary, but manageable. We have a partner that can take care of it, make it easy. That's what we want to do. And we're just happy to be able to provide those things for our clients as needed. So if you have any questions, let me know. So I'm going to hang around just a second. If you don't have any questions, feel free to go on about your day, and hopefully we'll be back in a couple of weeks and hopefully have some more information about vaccine mandates. But I'm happy to answer any questions, anything that you may have. And it's always good to see my favorite people. You guys or my Tuesday Talk support group. So I appreciate you you being here. Oh, you're welcome, Diana. Thank you. You too. All right, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and we will chat soon.